Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Smoke and Mirrors. I'm your host, Brian Brown, coming to you from thedailydank.com. Today, we've got a real mind-bender for you. We're going to dive into the incredible story of Charles Harrelson, a convicted hitman, and yes, the father of actor Woody Harrelson, and the conspiracy theory that he was involved in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. In this episode, we'll take you through Harrelson's dark and twisted criminal background, exploring his journey from a troubled young man to a notorious contract killer. We'll unpack his shocking claims about being involved in JFK's murder and analyze the circumstances that led to those sensational statements. But that's not all. We're also going to examine the mystery surrounding the famous Three Tramps photo taken in Dealey Plaza right after Kennedy was shot. Could Harrelson have been one of those shadowy figures caught on camera? And finally, we'll sift through recently declassified assassination files to see what they reveal or don't reveal about Harrelson's possible involvement in the JFK plot. So sit back, maybe light up something to mellow your mind, and get ready for a thrilling ride through one of the wildest true crime and conspiracy tales. You're listening to Smoke and Mirrors. Let's get into it. Now, who exactly was Charles Harrelson before his name got tangled up in one of the most infamous conspiracy theories of all time? Let's dig into his past to understand the man behind the myth. Charles Harrelson was born in 1938 in Lovelady, Texas. His early life was marked by trouble, and he eventually made a name for himself as a hustling encyclopedia salesman and a professional gambler in the late 50s. But Harrelson soon took a darker path. By 1960, he had already been convicted of armed robbery. Over the years, he gained a notorious reputation as a contract killer deeply tied to organized crime. Harrelson was believed to be involved in dozens of murders for hire starting in the early 1960s. In 1968, he carried out a hit on Sam DeGilia Jr., a Texas grain dealer, for a fee of $2,000. Though his first trial ended with a hung jury, he was retried and convicted in 1973, receiving a 15-year sentence. Thanks to good behavior, however, he was released in just 5 years. Yeah, you heard that right. This hitman managed to get out early for good behavior. But Harrelson didn't just stop there. After his brief stint of freedom, he was hired by El Paso drug kingpin Jamie L. Jimmy Chagra to assassinate a federal judge. Researchers have even alleged that Harrelson had connections to organized crime bosses like Carlos Marcello of New Orleans and Jack Ruby's circle through a mutual associate, Russell Douglas Matthews. Harrelson wasn't just a small-time crook. He was moving in the company of major underworld figures. One of his most infamous acts was the assassination of U.S. District Judge John H. Wood Jr. on May 29, 1979 in San Antonio. Judge Wood was famously harsh on drug dealers and earned the nickname Maximum John. Harrelson was paid a whopping $250,000 for the hit. This was a historic crime. Judge Wood was the first federal judge in U.S. history to be killed in the line of duty. Harrelson's wife, Joanne, was in on the plot and was later jailed for conspiracy and perjury. When authorities finally caught up with Harrelson in 1980, it resulted in a delirious standoff where he was high on cocaine and firing at imaginary FBI agents. This chaotic moment would spark the JFK confession tale we'll get into next. Harrelson was convicted for Judge Wood's murder in 1982 and handed 2 life sentences. By the 1980s, Harrelson wasn't shy about his bloody resume. He claimed to have committed many murders, possibly upwards of 20 or more hits, according to later statements. In jail, he allegedly bragged about being good at his job of murder for hire. Some sources say he left behind a stack of personal papers for his sons, in which he confessed to dozens of killings over his career. Whether this was self-mythologizing or fact, it's clear that Charles Harrelson was a seriously dangerous guy. One prosecutor even called him a complete psychopath might be more accurate, with zero empathy. So by the early 1980s, Charles Harrelson was a convicted hitman serving life behind bars. A violent outlaw, yes. But how does this tie him to the Kennedy assassination? For that, We have to rewind to that coked-up police standoff and Harrelson's own shocking claims. Get ready, because here's where the JFK conspiracy comes knocking.
Are you ready to elevate your cannabis experience? Welcome to thedailydank.com, your ultimate destination for everything weed, laughs, and good vibes. We're more than just a website, we're a community. A place where cannabis lovers come together to share, learn, and have a blast. Whether you're tuning in for the wild and hilarious 420 Somewhere podcast, getting your game face on during one of our epic game night live sessions, or waking up to the wakey bakey morning show for your daily dose of fun, we've got something for everyone. Dive into our exclusive podcasts, from the spooky to the weird to the downright hilarious. We've got a show for every kind of stoner. We're not just about listening, we want you to join in. Our online meetups and community events give you a chance to connect with fellow dank heads and dive deep into everything cannabis culture. And hey, if you're looking for your people, you've finally found them. The Daily Dank is your home for all things stoner culture, crazy theories, and a whole lot of fun. Join the family today at thedailydank.com. This is more than just a website, it's a lifestyle. That's thedailydank.com.
Late September 1980, picture this, a 6-hour police standoff on a Texas highway. Charles Harrelson, cornered and reportedly high on pure cocaine, is babbling and threatening to shoot himself. In the midst of this delirium, he blurts out 2 dramatic confessions. I killed the judge, and I killed President Kennedy. Yes, you heard that right. In that moment, Harrelson claimed he was involved in the 1963 JFK assassination. This bombshell declaration set off a media frenzy. Here was a known hitman seemingly linking himself to the most infamous American murder of the 20th century. But was it a genuine confession or the drug-fueled ranting of a desperate man? Let's unpack what happened and how Harrelson later walked it back. During the standoff, Harrelson was incoherent at times, talking about seeing FBI agents that weren't there and bargaining for his life. Under the influence of cocaine and panic, he shouted to police that he had assassinated JFK. This was the first time his name had ever been connected to Kennedy's murder. It was such a sensational claim that reporters and investigators took note. However, given the circumstances, many smelled a bluff. After his arrest, as the dust settled and the cocaine wore off, Harrelson himself downplayed his words. In a televised interview, he coolly explained, "At the same time I said I had killed the judge, I said I had killed Kennedy, which might give you an idea of the state of my mind at the time." He admitted that he made those claims in an effort to elongate my life. Essentially, he figured confessing to JFK's assassination might stall the cops, buy him attention, or otherwise delay the inevitable. In Harrelson's own later telling, it was a tactical bluff, not a true admission of guilt. Fast forward to Harrelson's 1982 trial for Judge Wood's murder. The JFK claim resurfaced in court. Prosecutors brought in Joseph Chagra, brother of the man who hired Harrelson, as a witness. Joe Chagra testified that Harrelson had privately boasted about shooting President Kennedy, even sketching a crude map of Dealey Plaza to show where he was hiding during the assassination. Pretty chilling stuff, except Joe Chagra didn't buy it. He told the jury he thought Harrelson was full of it, possibly angling to appear more valuable or insane than he was. Notably, the FBI had also investigated Harrelson's standoff confession and, according to an Associated Press report, apparently discounted any involvement by Harrelson in the Kennedy assassination. In other words, law enforcement officially treated his JFK claim as unfounded. Interestingly, Harrelson later voiced his own conspiracy beliefs about JFK, short of placing himself there. In a 1982 interview from jail, he rhetorically asked a reporter, "Do you believe that Lee Harvey Oswald killed President Kennedy alone, without any aid from a rogue agency of the U.S. government? I believe you are very naive if you do. So Harrelson implied there was a conspiracy to kill JFK, some rogue agency involvement, but he stopped short of claiming he was part of it. In another conversation, he provided an alibi. He said that at 12:30 p.m. on November 22nd, 1963, he was having lunch with a friend in Houston, and that he'd never have taken the Kennedy hit job anyway, because whoever did it would surely get caught or killed like Oswald. Harrelson seemed to understand that tying oneself to the JFK assassination was a good way to end up dead or discredited. It's worth considering Harrelson's mindset here. On the one hand, he might have been swaggering, trying to mythologize himself as a bigger outlaw than he was. On the other, if, and it's a big if, he truly had some involvement, confessing while high was about the worst way to reveal it. Either way, his on-again, off-again claims open the door for conspiracy researchers to take a very hard look at Charles Harrelson in connection with JFK's murder. Let's move on to one of the more intriguing aspects of the JFK assassination, the famous three tramps photo taken in Dealey Plaza shortly after Kennedy was shot. This photograph captured three shabby-looking men who were detained by Dallas police near the scene of the crime. Conspiracy researchers have long speculated about their identities, and you guessed it, Charles Harrelson's name comes up in this mix. First, let's set the scene. About 90 minutes after JFK was assassinated on November 22, 1963, Dallas officers escorted three disheveled men out of a railroad boxcar near Dealey Plaza. These men looked more like hobos than assassins, but their clean appearances and mysterious release stirred curiosity. They were briefly held for vagrancy and then released without any record of their identities. Many conspiracy theorists noticed that the tallest of the three tramps, seen in the middle of the lineup, bore a resemblance to a younger Charles Harrelson. He was lanky with a pronounced jaw similar to Harrelson's build. By the late 1980s, writer Jim Marrs popularized the idea that this particular tramp was Charles Harrelson. Marrs cited that Harrelson could have even had associations with intelligence-connected criminals around that time. The theory picked up steam, and forensic artist Lois Gibson examined the photos, concluding that the tramp could indeed be Harrelson. If that were true, it would place Harrelson right at the crime scene in Dealey Plaza, potentially as a shooter on the grassy knoll. But Harrelson wasn't the only name floated for these three tramps. Another theory proposed that Harrelson, alongside Charles Rogers, a fugitive ex-CIA operative, and Chauncey Holt, a self-confessed CIA asset, were the three tramps. Holt claimed in 1991 that he was one of the tramps and that he was in Dallas to hand out fake Secret Service credentials. According to Holt, the tramps were him, Harrelson, and Rogers, and they were hiding out after the assassination. Various independent researchers also tried to prove the tramp in the photo was Harrelson, pointing to similarities in hairline, nose, and chin. Some even overlaid images of Harrelson onto the tramp photo and found a match. There was a rumor that when Harrelson was arrested in 1980, he had photographs of Dealey Plaza on him, a claim never verified but often repeated in conspiracy circles. In 1989, the Dallas police finally released arrest records from November 22, 1963, which named the three tramps as Harold Doyle, John Gedney, and Gus Abrams. Journalist Mary LaFontaine discovered these files and published their identities. Researchers tracked down Doyle and Gedney, who confirmed they were two of the photographed tramps and that they had simply been wandering through Dallas. Abrams had passed away, but his family identified him as the third tramp. Despite these police records and living witnesses, diehard conspiracy theorists weren't entirely satisfied. Some argued it was too convenient that the tramps' identities surfaced nearly 30 years later. They suggested that real assassins might have impersonated the tramps and that the Dallas records misidentified them. However, most JFK researchers, even the conspiracy-friendly ones, accept that the three tramps were just everyday vagrants caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. So where do we stand on this three tramps theory? Official records tell us none of them was Charles Harrelson, and there's no confirmed evidence placing Harrelson in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963. But the intrigue of that photograph, combined with Harrelson's dramatic confession, keeps this theory alive in the conspiracy community. It's like a puzzle piece that almost but not quite fits the JFK assassination jigsaw. In our next segment, we'll take a look at recently declassified assassination files to see if there are any further clues about Harrelson's possible involvement in the JFK plot. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Smoke and Mirrors, where we are unraveling the tangled tale of Charles Harrelson and his alleged involvement in the JFK assassination. In this segment, we'll sift through recently declassified JFK assassination documents to see if they shed any light on Harrelson's possible role in one of America's most notorious crimes. Starting in 2017, the U.S. government began releasing long secret documents related to the JFK assassination. These troves of files have been eagerly examined by researchers and conspiracy theorists looking for any new information that could provide fresh insight or confirm long-standing suspicions. So what did these documents reveal about Charles Harrelson? Let's dig in. The FBI was fully aware of Harrelson's 1980 claim about killing JFK. In fact, there's an FBI report from October 1980 that details an inmate informant's assertion that Harrelson had even written a note confessing to Kennedy's assassination while in custody. The informant, Jimmy Chagra, who was the drug trafficker that hired Harrelson to kill Judge Wood, passed along this explosive allegation. However, despite the sensational claim, the FBI didn't find any corroborating evidence. Publicly, they dismissed Harrelson as a serious suspect. They essentially held the position that while Harrelson did say he killed JFK, they didn't believe it held any credibility. Next, let's look at the House Select Committee on Assassinations, or HSCA. This congressional committee reinvestigated JFK's death in the late 1970s, focusing heavily on conspiracy theories and the Zapruder film. While Harrelson's claims emerged a bit later in 1980, the HSCA had already scrutinized the three tramps photos. They employed forensic anthropologists to compare the tramp images to known suspects like E. Howard Hunt and Frank Sturgis, as well as other figures tied to the assassination theories. Although Harrelson wasn't part of their original analysis, the committee concluded that none of the suspects matched the mysterious tramps. This effort to clear the popular names of the time indirectly de-emphasized Harrelson's new claims since his name did not surface in their examination. Now, what about the CIA and other intelligence agencies? If Harrelson were truly involved in an intricate plot, you might expect his name to show up in some form in the CIA's files. The recently declassified documents include memos, asset lists, and surveillance reports from various agencies. However, nowhere in these CIA documents does Charles Harrelson's name appear as an operative or even as a person of interest in 1963. Harrelson was a Texas criminal for hire, not linked to military, CIA, or anti-Castro Cuban groups. If any rogue CIA or mob elements did recruit him, there's no paper trail that's been uncovered so far. Similarly, NSA and other agency records on JFK do not mention Harrelson. The newly released files haven't provided a smoking gun that connects him to the assassination beyond what was already known about his public statements and trial testimonies. Lastly, let's consider the broader verdict from these released documents and prior investigations. As it stands, there is no credible, verifiable mention of Charles Harrelson as a participant in the JFK assassination within these declassified records. The only mentions that arise are echoes of Harrelson's own jailhouse boasts. If there are any documents tying him to JFK's murder, they either remain unreleased or were destroyed, which seems highly unlikely. In summary, the declassified evidence, or rather the lack thereof, strongly suggests that Charles Harrelson did not play a role in the assassination of President Kennedy. The only association comes from Harrelson's own words, which law enforcement and the courts have long dismissed as non-credible. This doesn't mean the conspiracy theories will die, but it does shift the weight of evidence heavily towards Harrelson being uninvolved. So where do we go from here? Our journey through Harrelson's life and claims continues with one final look at what all this means. Stick around as we summarize and give our final thoughts on the matter. You're listening to Smoke and Mirrors. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the Healing Center, located at 1400 Needles Highway in the heart of Needles, California, right off the iconic Route 66 and just a stone's throw from the breathtaking Colorado River. But that's not all. Prepare yourself for the ninth wonder of the world, the legendary Wall of Flower. With over 60 brands and strains of top-tier cannabis, you'll be in flower paradise. At the Healing Center, we don't just have the best selection, we offer the lowest prices around. We're proud to be known as the #1 cannabis superstore in all the land, offering the best service, the best deals, and a shopping experience like no other. So, why wait? Come check out the world-famous Healing Center for yourself and see what all the buzz is about. For the latest scoop and hottest deals, head over to thedailydank.com and stay in the know. The Healing Center, where quality meets affordability. Your cannabis journey starts here.
All right, folks, we've blazed our way through the dark, winding alleyways of Charles Harrelson's life, his wild confessions, and the smoke-filled rooms of American history. So let's take a moment to spark up a recap and ask ourselves the ultimate question. Did Woody Harrelson's dad kill JFK? We started with Harrelson's rise from a smooth-talking hustler to a stone-cold contract killer, someone who didn't just flirt with organized crime, he straight up made it his career. Then came the 1980 standoff, where Harrelson, blitzed out of his mind on cocaine, claimed he not only murdered a federal judge, but also President Kennedy. Was it a desperate bluff to buy time? A fried brain-rambling nonsense? Or a slip of truth from a man who'd done too much dirt and seen too many shadows? Then we took a closer look at the infamous three tramps photo. Those mysterious men perp-walked through Dealey Plaza just after the shots rang out. Sure, official records say they were harmless hobos, but we can't ignore the uncanny resemblance one of them shares with a younger Harrelson. A coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe someone swapped the story faster than you can say classified. And speaking of classified, we dove into the newly declassified JFK files. And while Harrelson's name didn't pop up in any hard intel, no smoking gun, no grassy knoll guest pass, it also didn't erase the eerie connections. From whispers of CIA-backed hit squads to mob ties running straight through the Texas underworld, the Harrelson thread still weaves itself through the larger conspiracy quilt. So what's the verdict? Officially, no, Charles Harrelson did not kill JFK. There's no verified evidence placing him in Dealey Plaza that day. No fingerprints, no bullet casings, no CIA pay stub marked grassy knoll duty. But can we rule him out 100%? Not even close? There's a lot that can be debunked, but just as much that lingers in the haze. A hitman with CIA-adjacent contacts? A man who made a living keeping secrets buried 6 feet under? It's not a stretch to think he could have been tapped for a job that required disappearing afterward, literally or legally. And let's be honest, the CIA has lost more documents than most people have memories. Could Harrelson have been a pawn in a bigger plan, or just a wild card who knew more than he let on? Maybe that 1980 confession wasn't just coke-fueled chaos. Maybe it was a moment of unfiltered clarity. Or maybe, just maybe, it was one hell of a smokescreen. At the end of the day, the Charles Harrelson JFK conspiracy isn't about what we know. It's about what we can't unknow. Because when you stack up a professional hitman, a shady confession, a mystery photo, and a government that's allergic to transparency, well, you've got a conspiracy with legs and a license to kill. Thanks for joining me on this ride through history's smoke and mirrors. I'm Brian Brown, and this has been another episode where the truth is high, but the facts might be higher. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep your rotation tight. And if a guy in sunglasses asks too many questions about grassy knolls, maybe don't offer him a light. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into one of the more intriguing figures in American true crime and conspiracy history. I'm Brian Brown, and this has been another episode of Smoke and Mirrors. Be sure to check the show notes for any links or articles mentioned in today's episode. If you're hungry for more wild and crazy tales, head over to thedailydank.com for even more content to blow your mind. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep your rotation tight. See you on the next episode.